So in today's video, I'm going to be going over 5 things that you need to be doing to improve at Yu-Gi-Oh! My first tip to improving is to have a testing circle. I can't stress how important it is to actually have people around you that you can test with properly. Yeah, it can be useful to test on DB rated and at locals, but that doesn't compare to having dedicated testing partners. When you have a testing partner, you're able to test specific matchups while having to hope you run into them. Let's say you want to test like Vanquish Soul versus Yummy, right? Well, if you have a testing partner, you can tell them to bring Yummy, you bring Vanquish Soul, and as a result, you could get more testing done in a day than someone else might get done in 3 months when they're testing like Vanquish Soul at their locals, right? Also, let's say you were trying to see how a specific hand trap performs in that matchup. You and your testing partner can set up games where each of your hands have that card. That's not something you can do when you're playing at a local or a regional. Also, when you have a testing group, odds are they're all eager to improve. This will give you higher quality testing because everyone's going to be playing better. My second tip to improving at Yu-Gi-Oh! Is to have a reason for every deck building decision you make. Deck building is one of the skills that I think most Yu-Gi-Oh! Players are lacking in. Tons of players have good tactical play, but not many are also good at deck building. And one of the reasons that I think that's the case is that they don't really have a reason for half their choices, right? There have been so many times where I've asked someone why they were playing a certain card or why they were playing a certain like number of a card, and they just couldn't tell me. That's ridiculous. Like, how do you know? Like, how are you adding a card to your deck and you don't know why you're playing it? That makes no sense. If you deck build this way, then of course it's going to be hard to improve. You don't even know why you're playing what you're playing. But once you start to understand the reasons why you play certain cards, then that'll help you better evaluate cards in game. In my opinion, the most important part of deck building is to have a reason for every card you play. Not only should you know why you play a card, but you should also know why you play the amount of copies that you do. For example, let's say you play 2 copies of Book of Moon in your deck. When asked for the reasoning for playing Book of Moon, some people might say, oh, I play Book of Moon because the card is good. But saying the card is good doesn't really explain why you're playing 2 copies specifically. And it doesn't really explain why you're playing the card because other cards are good, other cards might be good, and you're not playing those other good cards. And it also doesn't explain the purpose of the card in your deck. It doesn't explain how it interacts with other decks in the format, etc., etc. You must have a reason for every deck building decision you make. Even if the reason ends up being wrong, I think in the long run, you're going to be ahead of people who play better deck lists but can't explain their reasoning behind the card choices. Also, something else I wanted to say when it comes to deck building personal preference does not exist. A choice can only be either correct or incorrect, nothing in between. Like, unless you have 2 choices and they each, over like a million games, are going to give you like a 50% win rate each, like, personal preference doesn't exist. Also, by the way, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and all that stuff. My next tip is that you must have a reason for every decision you make inside of the actual game. Deck building is important, but what's also important is technical play. Too many times, players will resort to something known as playing on autopilot. What this means is that when in the actual game, players will start to make decisions based on habit and routine with little conscious thought. Basically doing something without thinking about why you're doing it. And when you start making decisions without thinking about why you're making them, then that's when the misplays start happening. What's the reason you're normal summoning this monster? What's the reason you're activating that spell? What's the reason for the order of activating X before Y? Why did you use this effect? Why did you use that effect? All these are questions that you should be asking yourself when you're playing the game. And my 4th tip in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is to be open-minded. As is common with Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, it's very easy to see a card or strategy and immediately form strong opinions on it. I'm pretty, this is a big issue I have with myself, low-key sometimes. You might see someone play a card and your first thought is, this card is terrible. But one of the most important things is to not count out everything immediately. We're all human, so we all make mistakes. Sometimes we overlook certain aspects about cards. Maybe you think a card is bad, but upon further testing, you find out the card is better than you initially gave it credit for because you didn't factor in like X or you didn't factor in Y. Like I said, this is something I've struggled with myself in the past, having super strong opinions on things. Now, I'm not saying that you have to test out every single deck and tech choice out there. Nobody has the time to do that. Like, how many of you guys watching the video have tested Invectors in the past couple years? Odds are none of you have. But let's say your testing partner suggests a card and your first thought is this card seems terrible. Well, at least take a few minutes to think about the card and weigh the positives and negatives and listen to the reasons for considering it. And then maybe test the card out a little bit in a few games. My 5th tip to improving at Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be to look over your replays. Replay reviewing is one of the best things you can do to figure out what mistakes you're making. Obviously, this is something that you can't really do IRL, which is why playtesting on DB is so important. After each game on DB, you can open the replay and watch over it or send it to a friend to get a second pair of eyes. Sometimes we miss things on the first go around. And I also think it's important to replay review after each game and not after like 20 different matches, because if you play like 10 matches in a row and then you replay review, all the matches are kind of together. and like your mind isn't fresh. But if you play one match and then you do a replay review on that one match, your mind is fresh because that match just happened. So everything is like fresh in your mind. The sixth tip I have, which I didn't really planning on doing 6 tips, but whatever, is that you have to want it. You have to want to improve. Some players will say that they want to improve, but what they really like is the idea of improving or the idea of being the best. But they don't really want to be the best. If you really want something, then you're willing to put in the work, no matter what it takes. And if you really want to be good at Yu-Gi-Oh! And you really want to put in the work, then I think all of you guys can become insane at the game. I think when I think about some of the best players in the game, I think they, at the time that they were their best, they really, really, really wanted it. You know, I'm talking about players who were successful across multiple formats, not just someone who has success in one format or one event. They really, really want it, and they really, really put in the work to get that. So yeah. Anywho, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. It was really short, honestly. I wasn't really planning on it being this short, but whatever. In the future, I plan on making a dedicated video for how to deck build, how to get better technical play, all that good stuff, how to test. So yeah, stay tuned for that. And with that being said, goodbye, and I hope you all have a great day. Peace.